Hi and welcome back to another Alpha Challenge video. In this video I'll be showing you how to use Demon Hunter in its most aggressive form. The way that you use it is you mulligan very aggressively for Sock Puppet, Battlefiend and Spirit of the Titan, and with those you use it to get an early tempo advantage onto the board. It's important with this deck that you are trying to just send most of the damage to your opponent's face while not trading very much, and using your spells to be the things that use it to go into your opponent's minions. What you'll find in this gameplay footage is that I do start with the Sock Puppet, so it is a relatively strong start, and I've also got the Oracles in my hand as well, which are quite useful to allow you to keep getting more pressure onto your opponent. In this gameplay, I'm also playing against a Druid, which is not, in general, that strong against Demon Hunter, but the version that this person's playing is slightly different to the standard Dungar Druid that's been played on ladder. So what this person ends up doing is I've got both sock puppets on the board, so it means I've got a relatively strong board. And if this was Dungar Druid, the game would essentially be over since I've got the 2 mana minion in my hand as well that would increase the attack of all my minions. But because they're playing the Rising Waves, as you can see, it means that it's a little bit weaker. Like, I was hoping that that would be enough to stick onto the board for them, but I end up just having to float some mana with this turn. I do play down my Oracle here as well, because most druids don't have a way to deal with Oracle if it's relatively early on the relatively early turn, and it means that I can have that 3 mana just sitting onto the board for me. It also means in the following turn I'll be able to play down my other minions more aggressively. And as you can see, it meant they did use the armor to get more, to get the minion on the board and also get their armor. But I'm also at the moment deciding what the best way to do this is. I do use the Burning Heart just to hit straight through the 3/4 and with my other Oracle onto the board, because this allows me to draw an extra 4 cards, which is going to be quite strong going into my opponent's turn. This deck does have a limited sort of damage output as well, so you do need to try and keep your tempo quite aggressive towards the opponent, especially since the Sock Puppets have been taken out. And since this Druid is running a lot of these taunts, the Starship taunts, and obviously they'll be running Ziliax, the one that has invulnerability and elusive and all that, the Unkilliax, it means that you do need to play obviously aggressively into what you're going with here, but you also need to make sure that you are just going for and not trying to play around too much for it, because if they do get to their Unkilliax turn, there's no way that I'm going to be able to deal enough damage or deal very much damage towards them, especially since I'll be healing back 4 as well. You do have the Kain, but it's still not that much to be able to deal with the Unkilliax. Like, it gives you a turn that you'll be able to deal damage to the opponent by going through their taunts, but you do want to try and establish as much damage as you can down onto the board. As you can see, I've got my 2 Oracles, I've got my Spirit of the Team as well. This is quite aggressive into the opponent. They end up using their Starship here as well, so what I'm worried about them potentially doing is the hydration station play. So with that, I probably shouldn't have traded as I did just then, because it meant that it did mean that I dealt a lot of damage to the opponent just then. But if they had had a hydration station, the game would essentially been over, because I wouldn't have a way to clear their board with all the taunts that they'd be establishing. So if I was to take that turn back, I probably would have used the 1 mana spell and Metamorphosis to deal with their starship that they just made, but the spaceship they just made. But yeah, I did that play, and it ends up being okay, I guess. Because I've got the 3/2 down on the board as well, it means they weren't able to AoE my whole board with the Rising Waves, so that's quite strong as well. Now, as you can see, they've also gotten quite a lot of armor throughout this game, so it is Demon Hunter can deal quite a bit of damage, but it's not you're not able to deal extreme amounts of damage. And luckily here with the crewmate, I got the win free one. So in general, it put them into a false sense of security because this is going into the Unkiliak's turn. So I did play down the 4/4 with the win free, but with only two cards left in my hand, the opponent had the assumption that I wouldn't be able to play through their Unkiliaks because, well, I've only got two cards, and I'd need the Sunfree, Kane Sunfree, to be able to attack twice, but I had the exact cards that I needed to be able to deal with the opponent. So right now I'm just calculating to make sure I've got enough damage with all of my cards in my hand, which I do. So I attack twice with my Winfrey, I use the Sunfree, I use the Oracle, and then I use Metamorphosis to take out the Druid. So even though the Druid ended up gaining tons of armor, I was able to win that game because you're able to establish a lot of pressure. It's important that you're pressuring the opponent as much as you can in that situation. Okay, the next game is going into a Druid as well. So this one, instead of being the Druid that I just played, I'm playing against Dungar Druid. The mulligan that I'm going for is I'm keeping the Sock Puppet and getting rid of the and keeping the Battlefiend, but I will end up mulliganing the Quick Pick and the Headhunt as well, because they are quite strong cards, especially the Quick Pick. But it's you're wanting to be really aggressive, and with a 1/2 stat line, it's something that's more so just to keep you going rather than to have in your hand to keep as much as you can. I did draw my through the Fire and Flames, which is quite a strong card for this deck. It can combo with the Oracle, but it also can be useful to make your minions a bit stronger against potential threats. I do put it onto my Sock Puppet here because it makes it more threatening towards whatever they could be doing against it, but they also it means obviously I do a little bit more damage too. I end up getting the Desperado, so that probably would have been relatively strong, keeping my through the flames, but it's not that important in this situation because Druids quite often have to really curve quite hard, and since they're just going to keep trying to ramp, I've got a few turns that I can just deal damage to them, especially since it's not likely that they're going to be using the Rising Waves anytime soon, if they did run it, but this one is Dungar Druid, I'm pretty sure. And what this allows me to do is I can build up a lot of damage onto the opponent as well. So like, if you have a look at how much damage is just sitting in my hand, there's a lot. And because of the Burning Heart, it boosts the Sock Puppet's damage output as well. So it means that you can deal even more damage like that. So as you can see, I end up just using it with the Desperado, and then I can take out the Taunt while also taking out the Druid's health total, and that gets the win. Okay, so going into the next match, I'm playing against a Rogue. So Rogues obviously are still very popular in the higher ranks. That you'll notice that I'm playing Diamond at the moment. This is because it's the first day of the launch. I hadn't gotten Legend just yet, but yeah, so good. And playing it, I've got Battlefiend in my hand, so I do just keep that, and I keep the other two cards as well because I'm trying to get a strong curve against them. It's quite likely that they will have a way to take out these minions, so I do play down my Battlefiend first, and I give it a buff, just because I do want to establish a bit of a threat towards them, so I'm hoping that they use their Tar Slick and things like that to reduce down the likelihood of them being able to clear my other things on the board. And I'm also trying to be as aggressive as possible to try and make it so they're not using they're using up their resources less efficiently against me. So they end up trading into my Battlefiend, which is fine. I could have quite easily used the coin and the hero power that turn, but I did want to hold it just because it's possible that I may need to curve out in future turns, and I didn't really need to deal that extra 1 damage or 2 damage it would have been in that situation, because I was thinking that they more than likely were going to be able to just use spells to take it out. So in this turn going here, I do have the Desperado. I also have my minion that gives the hero power. I play down the Desperado first because I'm trying to deal as much damage as possible, and since I saw them use the Task Lick previously, it's quite likely they don't have a way to They don't have a backstab in their hand to be able to deal with my minions that are here, because you normally just use a task like going into face and then using the backstab onto the minion. So it meant that I wasn't too concerned of dealing with something that's a bit, that could actually damage me. I end up drawing the Burning Heart, but I just play down my one cost minion, and I'm just deciding here whether to use the Burning Heart or the Acupuncture, or just hold it to try and make it so my opponent's a bit unsure of what I'm doing. I end up holding it just because this is quite a low cost hand, and since I've got the coin, I can play basically anything down in my deck anyway. And I want to try and make it so they don't have as much knowledge of my play as possible, especially since they haven't really been doing too much in the turns, like the Oracle being played down, here or there, and then they end up shadow stepping it for some reason. I feel like it's a misplay, but I don't really think they were in a situation to win anyway. Okay, and then they end up conceding. Okay, so going into the next game, it's against another rogue. So once again, it's quite likely they're using a cycle rogue. So this deck is quite strong against rogues if they aren't able to establish too much tempo. If they do, well, you can't really do too much about it. Like if they have the backstabs and things like that, along with the Oracle on curve and everything, that's, just the way it is. So I just mulliganed very aggressively for my cards that I needed. I obviously got quite a good hand for versing rogue. So like having the sock puppets, it's quite strong, because your opponent will quite likely not have a play for it, or if they do, they end up using a backstab and things like that. That's not very useful. They also in this situation thought that they'd have a safe way of playing that 3-2 down and then being able to clear on the following turn, but because I had my spirit of the team, I was able to trade very efficiently into them, and they weren't really able to do anything differently for me against me. They end up using Dig for Treasure here, 2 Dig for Treasures, and because I have the Sock Puppet on the board, I've already showing quite a lot of damage against them. I do use the Acupuncture here as well, just to push some more damage down onto them, because the more pressure I apply, the more likely they'll not trade very efficiently, or I'll be able to get the lethal earlier and earlier. Right now, because of the Burning Heart, I do have quite a lot of damage because I can just put it into one of my minions. They have the breakdance to be able to trade quite efficiently, but because I have both the sock puppets, they do deal quite a lot of damage just sitting in my hand. And I end up drawing into going down swinging, so right now I'm just counting up how much damage I'd be able to end up doing. What I end up deciding is I'm just going to use the Burning Heart and use it onto one of my own minions. I had to do that because if I had have used it into their minion, I wouldn't have gotten the buff. But with sitting on 2 health, and rogues don't really have any heal, the only heal they have is their Grifter usually if they run it, and they don't run any taunts. I'm sitting in a position that, with the Sun Free, there's no way they can end up winning this. And they do end up trading into my the puppet, but the game's essentially over because I can just hero power. I have the win on board. So I'd end up just doing the wall played for them because there's not really anything they can do. I think they're just playing cards for the sake of playing cards down. So they end up, they do their cycle, they draw through some more cards, but because they didn't have anything that was there for them, and because their plays just didn't work out, and I had all the answers for it, obviously they ended up winning for that situation. Okay. Death Knights are quite difficult class to play with Demon Hunter, especially if it's the rainbow one, because with their 3 mana minion that just life steals, there's no way that you can deal with that amount of healing, especially with how aggressive it is. I end up keeping the spirit of the team, and I'm just at the moment just trying to deal damage as quickly as possible as I can to them, and I need to make sure that I'm being as aggressive as possible. You'll notice that I misplayed because I am a little bit tilted simply because against Death Knight, it's a very, 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 very tricky matchup. So I did make a misplay by missing that 1 damage. Obviously it could be important in the future, it couldn't. I'm not too sure if it ends up being relevant. I end up having the 2 damage, and because I don't want them to really have the availability to be able to trade too well, I do put it into the 1-2 because it's possible also they may have the life steal anyway. They end up getting the Hounder, which is quite problematic for me. I do have my Oracle here, which is what I end up playing because that was the thought that I had for it. I end up using the Rush, and I'm just deciding which one to put it on. I decided to put it onto the Oracle because it is able to trade better into the minions that are here. The Oracle also ends up drawing me some cards. And I end up trading into the 1-2 because I don't want to have to deal with a possibility of a very aggressive board into me. I don't trade into the 2-2 with my face because if I did, it meant that they'd be able to attack with 1 extra damage on the board anyway, with that 1-1 that just got summoned out. They end up using the Corpsicle into my Spirit of the Team, which is fine. Like, it reduces down the damage output that I have, and I just play down my Ziliax. The Ziliax here, they have 6 damage that I can think of right now, so it's not enough to be able to deal with the Ziliax that's here. So I do have enough right now to be able to deal with it. So I keep my Acupuncture and Hot Coals to be able to deal the AoE to this opponent's board. That means that it fully clears it because it does 2 damage, and then everything gets its lifesteal and gets its reborn and death rattle activated, and then it does another 2 damage afterwards, which means that I was able to clear everything that I needed to, and then I just am deciding what the best way to go about it, and I just hero power into them. So sitting with 10, they're sitting with 10 health, and I'm sitting with 16, so I'm sitting in a decent position, but there still is the availability that they can burst me quite easily. So I need to make sure what I'm, especially since they do have the Horn of the Winter and things like that. And because I do have the Ziliax on the board, it meant that they were wasted just then. They just wasted 8 of their damage that could have gone face with the Oracle and then the Horn of the Winter that was sitting there. They end up playing the Buccaneer to try and establish tempo onto the board. So I'm just right now counting how much damage that I've got. So I deal the 2 first to just see what type of minion I get. And I'm just checking to see if I do have lethal, which I don't. So I'm just right now thinking if I can trade most efficiently to make sure that I'm still keeping tempo on the board, but also still dealing damage to the opponent. So I end up just trading into the opponent's Oracle, and then I just use my hero power. I use my attack from my hero to their face. They end up using the Pit Boss here. Like, it's fine, but it just means they have a 1-1 that's on the board anyway. And with my hand that I have here going into turn 7, I just have lethal anyway. So I play the Cane, I play the Spirit of the Team. I could have just done the hero power otherwise and then been able to take them out. And because I played against the Frost one, it is, obviously a lot easier than playing against them. And I end up getting to Legend. I get top 24 Legend with this deck. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you are enjoying the content, please like and subscribe for more of the videos. Bye for now.